Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Morphing Tower podcast. That's right, the podcast that just doesn't know what the heck it's doing, and I'm fine with that. Today, I have a memo from our old friends at the Homunculus Research Department, or HR as we call them, and it reads thusly. Dear employees of the Morphing Tower, as many of you are aware, there was at one point a small golden man running loose in the office breathing fire. We regret to inform you that mandatory searches of employee workstations will begin as early as Monday. We have reason to believe that this metallic creature may be hiding amongst the clutter and desk toys on some well-meaning, hard-working employees. If you have noticed a small golden figure on your desk within the past few weeks, you have not, in fact, received some kind of an award. Rather, there may be a monstrous creation hiding amongst the bobbleheads and empty candy wrappers. Please remain vigilant and report any suspicious disturbing of surface areas in and around your workstations. Sincerely, Homunculus Research Department. Wow. I mean, HR is just really killing it. Ever since that little homunculus got out, they've been just so stellar about hunting it down. Maybe they'll catch him, I don't know. Well, I am joined today by a very special guest, Timothy Halpin Art, whose paths I crossed in the online space, as with many things. Then I found out, believe it or not, that they actually work here at the tower, and in this very expansive room. What is this place that we're recording this episode in, exactly?
Yeah, well, this is just the room that I like to hang out in around here. I don't even know if you could really call it a room. It's more of a greenhouse of sorts. It's made to emulate the outdoors. It's kind of a forest with a little beach right nearby. It's just a nice area to get some work done once in a while.
Yeah, I was noticing a severe lack of walls. That's
Yes,
interesting.
that's actually a technology that worked very hard on. You'll eventually run into a wall, but it's they're hard to find.
Okay, so that's not existential at all. So it's not like the Truman Show or anything like that.
No. There are walls. They're just hard to find.
Okay, got it. They're like video game, like invisible barriers, like do
Yes,
not pass.
yeah.
Okay, got it. The first time our paths crossed was you left a comment on one of my video essays. I think it was the maze essay, I want to say, maybe?
I remember. I think the first one I watched was or maybe I watched this after. I watched and really enjoyed your the maze one, and then also the Joe Death in the Graven Image. But yeah,
that's right.
The first time.
It was cool because the comment itself, I'm glad that you left it because I would never have found your stuff if you hadn't left that comment, because you said something along the lines of, like, as another person online in the creative space trying to make things, like, I can appreciate what you're doing. And so that gave me the opportunity to look at your artwork, which I just want to say right at the top, I love your art style. And we're going to get more into that here in a little bit. It's really unique for, like, the era we're living in. And I love that so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm very proud of where I've been able to get it. I honestly just recently, semi-recently, like the last year is when I really sort of was able to grab onto what I would say is like my personal style.
Really? That recently? You could have fooled me.
Yes, yeah. It was, I had always known sort of what I wanted it to be from pretty early on. I mean, I've been drawing my whole life, but from pretty early on, I knew what I want it to be, sort of a black and white, mostly black and white, for like pen and ink, and large lines, and and that came from a bunch of different sources of inspiration. But just recently, within like the last year, maybe year and a half, I sort of was able to pinpoint, and like my skills basically caught up with my taste, I would say.
Okay. That's a cool way of putting it. I can totally relate where, like, you sit down at a desk in front of a piece of paper and you have these grand ideas and maybe you do a couple sketches and then you start into the real work beyond just the abstract and you're like, oh, I don't have the skill to do that yet.
Yeah, it can be very discouraging. I mean, I feel like this is the case for a lot of people, but all of my, attempts to improve my art and such, it's never been really concrete. Like, there'll be some advice from, like, I'll see online different artists or mentors where, I'll take their advice and follow their concrete steps. But most of it has been sort of all over the place and sort of just trying to draw like the people I admire and trying to draw the things I want to draw. And so in doing that, it was sort of like a stumbling into eventually being able to draw what I liked and how I liked.
Would you say, I wonder what your experience with this is, because as somebody like who also like draws and stuff, I'm curious. Do you feel like sometimes, obviously this isn't 100% case, but in the pursuit of mimicking certain styles, since your skill level is not presumably at the same level as, like a Watterson or, the illustrator behind Tintin that you credited recently.
Oh, yeah, hairs. Or,
Right, right,
I'm
right.
probably butchering the pronunciation, but yes.
That's fine. It's French. It's all French to me.
Yeah.
But all that to say, like, in the act of trying to mimic that, not in a copycat sense, but trying to mimic the style, since the skill isn't quite there, it's de facto going to look a little bit different. And in a weird way, you can almost fail upwards into creating your own style. Because, like, in theory, you're not going to just be able to replicate somebody else's style out of nothing. And in your attempt to copy it, you might accidentally stumble into like a style that you really enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely a big part of it. I think it's like, obviously you can stumble into like other things if your skill doesn't obviously match the other person's who you're trying to emulate. But I would say more so, for me at least, it was, I would see a style. We can give, I guess, Tintin, like the style of Tintin, his art.
Mm-hmm.
I would see his style, I would try to emulate it, and then in emulating it, even in like my flawed attempt at emulating it or drawing in his style, I would see the parts of it that like connected with me and I actually liked and were the reasons I liked his style would become more apparent. Because before trying to emulate it, I just knew, I like his style. I don't really know what about it is. Like, I could try and figure it out, but in general, it's like I like his lines and stuff. And then in trying to emulate it, it's like, okay, I like how he applies pressure in these lines. And so by doing that, you're able to apply that to your own style. And I think that may be something for people a little bit more into developing their own personal style. But I think it also can apply for anyone looking to feel like an artist, as many say.
I think that's a brilliant point, because doing that in that emulation, or like, trying to, take cues from things. I like the way that you summarized it, where it's like, at the time, you didn't even know what about their style you really liked. Like, you could maybe at first only say, in a broad sense, I like how they draw things. But it's not until you actually get into the trenches and try to replicate or sketch the way that they did, follow some of their methodology, that you'd actually discover with like a fine-tooth comb, oh, I really like how this artist does line work. I really like how this artist uses color. It's like, until you actually get into the nitty-gritty, into the actual process of trying to work with some of the same tools or go for like some of the same looks, you might not even realize what it is, that incomprehensible thing about that art style that draws you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a good example for me is Calvin and Hobbes. Like, I started reading Calvin and Hobbes probably when I was like, I don't know, like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And like, well, first of all, it was funny. Even even when I didn't get a lot of the jokes back then, because they were, more like, a lot of the stuff in it is very not adult, but like,
Calvin uses a lot of $10 words, so like going back and rereading it for the first time is like an eye-opening experience. We were like, oh, that's actually really smart.
Yeah. Even when I was younger, I was like, I like this. I like how it's drawn. I also think it's really funny. But then when I was drawing, there was times when I was younger, starting out drawing, I would try to emulate, and I'm like, this is so hard, and I can't do this. And it's just like sort of again, like within the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, that I like sort of went back to it and was like, okay, I'm a little bit better now. Let's see if I can emulate it better and see what I like about it. And in doing that, I was able to take this thing, which I've always liked since I was super young, and recognize like, oh, he chooses each line he draws Calvin with like super cautiously. He chooses it intentionally, and like fobs, each stripe is drawn. He thinks about where it's going to go, so that he can only draw fobs with like 10 lines instead of 20.
Right.
And that's just like, that's something I only recently figured out I liked about it, because when I first started reading it, obviously I was like, this is a funny book about a kid and his tiger. But yeah, I think it's, and that's going back to like your skill catching up with your taste. Like I wasn't able to emulate his style because it's a very reductive style, and this is sort of a separate point, but I think it's definitely very helpful to try your best, even if you aren't very good at it, at a realism of a sense of a sort, so that you can reduce the realism and have your simple style be more grounded because you understand it.
Yeah.
As a kid, I was like, oh, I can draw this cartoon tiger and kid, but now as an adult, I'm like, this is like insanely good art, and he knows how to draw. Like he understands how to draw, and he uses that when he's drawing these simple characters.
The best way I can describe some people's visual art styles is like if a haiku could be drawn, where such precision and careful deliberation is taken. As a brilliant example, Joe Death, like Ben Shipper's book, his art style is very much that way to me, where like like even though it's a looser style, it's still extremely precise in the sense that like you're working with the bare minimum of what you need to communicate your idea, and you're not wasting space with anything. You're being very deliberate about the art choices that you're making. And this dovetails beautifully into a question that I had prepped for this episode, and we've kind of already got into it a little bit. But it's cool having your perspective on this, since the way that you've described it yourself is that you like just recently sort of discovered this style of yours that you're trying to lean into. But in terms of advice for people trying to develop your own style, like from your more recent experience, like what are some things that you would advise artists who are trying to develop their own style?
That's a good question, and this is probably like a couple months ago, but I have done a draft, and then restarted about 3 times of a YouTube video on finding your art style. Because I keep like either developing like my video style, or I just kept wanting to get the audio better, or whatever it was, wanting to get the script better. The main point of the video, what I was basing it on, is a quote by Henry Matisse. I'm sure you're familiar in some way with his work, a French painter. And I might butcher this quote, but he basically says, "Don't try to be original. Be simple. Be good technically, and if there's something in you, it will come out."
I like that.
So yes, so that's basically what I would suggest to anyone who's trying to like find their art style. Originality isn't something you chase. Originality is just what happens when you create things you want to create, because you are different than everyone else. And so in that quote, the points, it's don't try to be original, be simple, be good technically. So the be good technically is you have to understand your medium, what you're creating in, and that's just through practice, of course.
Right.
I don't want to be too theoretical in this, because people are like, oh, okay, that's great and all, but how do I like apply that in my practice of drawing? But part of your practice is drawing copies of master studies of people you like, and I don't think you have to try too hard when doing that to sort of pick and choose things to add to your style. If you just if you copy enough people you like, and then try to draw something, I think it will come out. And that's what I think the quote sort of encapsulates, where it's be simple, be good technically, and if there's something in you, it will come out.
Yeah. That's really solid advice. I like that because I think some artists like that happens naturally. Like if you expose yourself to other
Yeah,
mediums, other art forms, other artists' styles, very naturally what will happen, whether you're aware of it or not, is you will start to incorporate things that you like from those styles into your current drawing. And then sometimes
yeah,
maybe more fledgling artists who are just getting into it, they're more aware of the fact that they're on the hunt for that. But I feel like if you're
yeah,
just sort of doing your thing, drawing, over the course of time, that stuff will just sort of you'll pick stuff up over time, but you actually have to pick up the the tools and start drawing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think like the main reason I wanted to make the video is because a majority of the videos that I watched on YouTube, like growing up, or have seen recently about art style, they always try to give like, these exercises and stuff, which I don't think are bad per se, but it's more of, as I was saying, it's more of like having to do with that quote. It's trying to master your technique and drawing stuff you like, copying people you like, and it will sort of just come out. You don't really have to try to find it.
Yeah. Random question for
Okay.
you. This is an odd one. So I
Okay.
was thinking about this last week, or just like recently in general. I think
Mhm.
it was like on a long car trip. I asked somebody this question. It was, if you could step into any painting, what would you bring with you and leave behind, and what would you take with you from the painting? So, like, as an example, one that I talked about with my dad was Nighthawks by Edward Hopper.
Oh yeah.
Some of you listeners probably know the painting, even if you don't realize you know the painting. But if I was to
Yeah.
describe it to you, it is a few people, three individuals, and like a guy behind the counter of like a diner at night. And I think the most interesting thing about it to me is just how Hopper nails the whole idea of isolation, where like
Yeah. Yeah.
the street itself is so clean and yet it feels so barren. And there's like a man and a woman next to each other at the counter, and yet it almost feels like they're strangers. Like even though you assume an association, it seems like they're alone. And there's a guy sitting by himself and he feels alone. And there's only one worker
Yeah.
behind the counter and he's looking over at these people and he seems alone, isolated behind the counter. And it's just like a masterful work, but it's such a powerful vignette that like I think that one would be a lot of fun to step into. I would definitely step into that painting with a piece of chalk and write some message on the sidewalk outside the diner. I don't know what message it would be, just something
Okay.
random. And then I would go inside and I'd get a piece of pie and take that with me.
Okay.
So it's just like a random thought experiment that the more I was thinking about it, I was like, what are the kinds of paintings that I would want to like sort of Mario 64 just jump your way into?
Yeah. Yeah. That is an interesting question. It's also a hard question.
Yeah, because
The
there's so
I
many.
mean, yeah. The immediate like one my brain jumped to because I really like this painting, which is another Edward Hopper, is Swa Blue, which I'm not sure if you know it by name, but it's the one with the white clown
Oh,
um,
yes, yes,
at
yes.
the cafe. Um, I really like that painting. It's kind of a depressing painting, but I really like it for one reason or another. I've just always been drawn to it.
So for the listeners, this painting, it's crazy that we both picked Hoppers. I think that's really cool. I don't know, maybe there's just something
Yeah,
about
yeah,
his where it just seems like a set piece where like you could
yeah,
walk
yeah,
in and interact with the situation. The one that you described, Swa Blue, is
yeah,
people at an outdoor like cafe. There's like it looks like Japanese lanterns hanging, and
yeah, yeah.
there's a few different people. I think it's funny. I don't think I ever noticed that the clown is just sitting with two random dudes. Like he's at their table.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, this is another one where it's a big focus on like isolation, even though there's a bunch of people around them. Like it's very clear that the clown is like separate from all these people around him, even though, as you said, he's at a table with two other dudes, but he's somehow. Well, I mean, a big part of it is that Hopper intentionally made him way brighter than every other person
Yeah.
in the uh, in the cafe or outdoor area, and he just seems so like far distant and separate from everyone else, and just like sad, and it also adds to it that he's a clown because that's the biggest one of the biggest ironies, the sad clown.
Yeah. Oh, just on
Um,
like on a smoke break too. I love the fact that there's just like a
yeah,
cigarette in his
exactly.
mouth. He's just like sitting there. So my question is, if you could step into Soir Bleu, what are you taking
Mhm.
with you to leave behind, and what are you taking out of the painting?
To be honest, I would probably take in like a party hat and just put it on the clown.
That's brilliant. I love that.
I that might be like too much, but I feel like it would just add like a little bit more, like a little bit more like, wow, this is really isolating, or it would just be funny,
I mean,
just
either
like,
way, I think
oh
that's a brilliant answer.
yeah.
So, what are you
Um,
taking with you as a souvenir?
Honestly, I'd probably take one of the lanterns because those are really cool
Oh,
lanterns,
yeah. That's good.
and have that hanging in my room.
Both hoppers is wild. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. And if I can add just real quick, I would also any Winslow Homer painting, I would like not even bringing anything with me or taking anything. I would just love to be in any of them because they're all. I don't know how familiar you are with his work, but they're all
He's mainly
beautiful.
just like outdoor picturesque stuff,
Yeah,
right?
beautiful renditions of just like mostly American landscapes, but they usually have some sort of person living within it and just like living their daily life. And I mean, it seems like it'd be so nice to be in that moment.
It seems so on brand for you to appreciate Winslow Homer, given all of the like seascape and beach paintings that you see when you like look him up.
Yeah, yeah. He's definitely a, he's definitely a big inspiration for the subject matter that I like to uh, illustrate, especially with like the children playing outdoors and stuff. A lot of his paintings are like that, and I just really, I don't know, something with Edward Hopper, you can appreciate like the deeper message where he's trying to sort of emphasize this modern idea of being isolated even in like a big city and stuff, like, or surrounded by people, that just this isolation that all humans experience at some point. But with Winslow Homer, it's more so just he's capturing this like wholesome, beautiful moment of life. Just just these kids running in a field or just sitting in the shade, and it's just, I feel like everyone can relate to that, and it just brings them joy because it's like, yeah, that's nice for anyone,
Sort of
you
just
know.
like the way he's like elevating the what most people would consider mundane, or people that maybe
Yes,
you wouldn't think of as being subjects of great paintings. Like it's
yes, yeah,
closer to
exactly.
like a photograph than a painting, in the sense of like
Yeah, yeah,
just the raw like authenticity of capturing that moment, like you said.
yeah, yeah. It's skillful in the painting, but also a majority of the value just comes from what like seeing what Winslow Homer is choosing to paint. Like it's which for me, like, that's basically, there's colors in photography and like composition, but a lot of what I enjoy out of photography is just, oh, that's what you noticed when you went to this area, and like that, this is what you're seeing, which is cool to see. It's like seeing out of someone else's eyes.
Yeah.
And like I don't do too much photography, but there was uh, one day when I was living in San Diego. Me and my friend just went out, and we went to downtown San Diego, and we just decided to take pictures of, we're in the same area, walking with each other, and we had very different, pictures by the end because we were looking at different things, but we were in the same area, and that's what I think is really cool about photography, and I think it applies to Winslow Homer because although his painting is beautiful and very skilled, he isn't adding like any as far as I'm taking away, he isn't adding too much like extra message. It's sort of just capturing what he sees and what he finds beautiful.
Yeah. I think of the ones that I'm seeing here, I would definitely step into his painting Moonlight. I'll pull it up here on the terminal. I would definitely step into this one. And in terms of what I would take, or what I would bring with me, I think
Oh, that
I
one is
would bring. This is a tough one because of how simplistic. It's just two people sat on a beach, like at night, with the moonlight shining off the water.
nice.
Um,
Yeah, a nice.
maybe like a closed parasol, like sticking out of the sand but closed, like off to one side.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
And I would
yeah.
definitely just take like a
Yeah.
seashell with me from the shore, 100%.
I'm looking through like my saved Winslow Homer paintings, and I don't even know if I could like send one in particular and be like, I would, I just want to go in all of them because they're all things I want to, places I want to be.
I think an aspect of his style that I really, really like, just at, like sort of just reviewing some of the pieces that are just available for you to see, is I appreciate the fact
Yeah,
that like I don't feel like Homer like pigeonholed himself into ultra realism in terms of how like his brushstrokes fell, or like
yeah,
I feel like he still kept a very painterly tone, but still did it in a way that seems so real. But he didn't lose any of his
yeah,
own personal style. It's like a nice halfway point where you can still see like the brushstrokes in the sky and everything, but the way that like he does light falling on things seems so real.
yeah, yeah. That's very well described. I wouldn't say Homer's like fully impressionistic, but when it comes to those two, like realism or impressionism, I usually tend towards impressionism, and that's something I very much appreciate about Homer is that he's taking the like study of light that the impressionists sort of focused on,
Hmm.
and he does it in a way that where he captures realistically these scenes. Um, but it's still obviously a painting.
Yeah. So we've sort of danced around the question that I wrote down that I want to ask, but like, how did you get into drawing? Obviously, you talked about like reading Calvin and Hobbes and like looking at Tintin. So like,
Uh-huh.
I get some ideas about some of the things that have inspired you over the years, but like, how did you actually get into drawing?
Um, well, my mom, when I was younger, would always encourage, like, it was just sort of one of the activities we did whenever my mom, like, wanted me and my brothers to do something.
Give
Like,
you
she
something
would just be
productive to
like,
do.
yeah, exactly. Like, it would be like, oh, you want to play with cars or build blocks, or do you want to draw or paint? And so it's sort of like, I grew up with it. So, like, I had always been drawing, and then as I got older, I was like, I like doing this, so I continued to do it sort of just by myself. And then when I sort of give the starting point for when I started like drawing to get improve, not just for fun. I mean, obviously still for enjoyment, but also to improve. Started in high school, probably late freshman year, early sophomore year. I sort of got into, I don't know how many like art YouTubers you know, but there's like this YouTube channel Proco and one called Modern Day James where they just go over like the fundamentals, and I got really into that and figure drawing. And that's when I sort of just started taking it seriously and like trying to improve and sort of like trying to figure out or thinking about, well, that because that was also when I was thinking about, okay, can I like do this as a career?
Hmm.
Um, and so I was like, if I am, I have to improve. So yeah, I mean, to answer the question more bluntly, I think I've been drawing for as long as I can remember, basically.
That's awesome. I like it's such a small thing, but I think it's profoundly lost on. I'm gonna sound like such a boomer right now. I feel like the concept of like art as a means of entertainment, as more than just a creative process, like it's so sad that people don't even comprehend the idea of like this is a thing that can bring you joy that you can do for dirt cheap almost anywhere you want, And like for some people it's not even in their mind that it's like an option. Like they just don't think of it as a means of entertainment.
It is strange to see that like some people just don't understand. Like, oh, you do like you enjoy doing that.
Yeah, at least for me, like I tell people all the time that I gotta get easier hobbies. I say that,
Yeah,
but like at the same time, the amount of enjoyment that I get for completing a project is like unrivaled. Like when I finish a project, like that is like
yeah,
the
yeah.
best feeling. Um, so real quick before I forget, you were talking about like a video. Are you? Is this video that you were working on that you were talking about had multiple drafts? Would this be something that you were going to post to YouTube?
Yes. So, I mean, as you know, I do like Instagram. I put reels out in my art on Instagram,
Your reels are great,
which
by the way.
thank you. Yeah, I sort of dance between like the pleasing the algorithm and creating stuff that I think is good, because usually stuff that pleases the algorithm isn't really good. At least on Instagram. YouTube, it's kind of a different story, but um, well, somewhat. But yeah, so I've been thinking about for a while, like putting something out on YouTube, because I think that I have stuff to say that's a little bit longer form,
Hmm.
and I think it could do better on YouTube. I say I was working on it. This was like several months ago, because I got to the third draft. I sort of edited it almost all the way through, and then I sort of stopped for like a week and looked back on it, and I just did not like it. So,
Mm.
and then I've been doing a bunch of other stuff, work and art and working on the Instagram and stuff. So that's sort of gotten away from me, but it is something that I want to go back to, because I think that, for longer form stuff, YouTube is obviously the way to go. I mean, you know that
Yeah.
for sure,
Well, I mean, I'm
with your
super
channel.
I'm super biased because like I think everybody should be creating videos and posting them and like delving into their passions. So I'm definitely biased when I say if and when you do drop that, I will be first in line to give it a watch because I would love to see you start making YouTube videos as well. That'd be so dope.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I will probably within, I don't want to say like anything definite, but in a month or so, probably I'll at least start working on it. Um, to give myself like the least amount of accountability possible right now. Just maybe, kind of. Who knows? I might do it.
I mean, that's awesome. Like I said, I so look forward to that. Um, again, I think everybody should be doing that because it drives me crazy whenever, not crazy. It makes me sad when I hear creative people be like, "Well, I wanted to do this, but it just wasn't good enough." And so I left it and I never went back to it or something like that. Like I've had too many conversations with creatives where like they're talking retroactively going back like years. I was just like, oh, I had this idea. They'll
Yeah, yeah,
describe it to me, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that is such a good idea. Like, where are you with that? Like, are you going to do anything with it? And they're just like, I don't know. And it's like, no, like I want to
yeah,
see you do
yeah.
something with it. It's so good. So there are two things that come to mind that are just sort of random but also connected. First of all,
Mhm.
I'll pull it up here on the terminal, but this picture of Calvin stomping through this city, I got to go to that pavilion.
That's a real pavilion. I did not know that.
Yeah, so it is Chagrin Falls in Ohio. And
Okay,
so there's a candy
that's
shop.
cool. I didn't know that.
There's a candy shop nearby in that same square, and they have a bunch of like
Uh huh.
illustrations of Calvin and Hobbes up on the wall. Because at one point in time, Watterson lived in or around Chagrin Falls, and so that little like pavilion down in the middle, my family, we got a picture. There was another family there with us, and we all got a picture at that pavilion. So it's so cool.
That's super sick. Yeah, that's. I did. I mean, I should have guessed that he based his like places on places he lived, but I did not know that was a real pavilion. That's super sick.
So the second thing I
Hmm.
was curious is since
Mhm.
you love Tintin, like the 2D, like the illustrated cartoon, what was your feeling about the movie that came out? Because I loved the movie, but I was just
Yeah,
wondering, does it land in the Valley of the Uncanny for you, or are you okay with it?
when I first watched it, when I was, I don't know when did it come out? Like
Oh gosh.
2013,
Yeah, hold on. You're gonna make me
2011,
feel like
something
really
like that.
old. Hold on, Tintin movie. I'll look it up here. It's gonna make me feel old either way. 2011.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I wasn't like too old then, but like or too young. When I first saw it, I was like, this looks a little weird. But like, I feel like even if you think that at the beginning, it's just so engaging that you just get over it.
Yeah.
Like the filmmaking, the animation, I mean Tintin in general. It's just like it's like good old fashioned adventure stories, and I feel like you can't just be like anyone who like dislikes that. I don't know like what's going on in your head. How do you not like a good fun adventure story?
Well, I think
Um,
Spielberg was like the perfect choice for the direction because it very
yeah.
much feels like
Well,
a lost Indiana Jones adventure.
yeah. Did he direct it? I thought he was just a producer.
Let's see. No, director Steven Spielberg. I
Oh,
think he was a
okay. You know,
producer as well.
I mean, it's phenomenal directing, so that makes sense. But I think I was reading about like there was a supposed to be a sequel, and it was supposed to be Peter Jackson directing it, but
Oh,
I don't know. I think they like the people who have the rights didn't know if they wanted it to happen,
that
and
would
like
get me back into the theaters so quick.
yeah, me too. I would be there opening night.
Because I feel like that's also a series where, provided it's done well, like they could have made a lot more of them because you don't need an overarching connected plot really. You can just do bottle episode movies basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Based on the comics, like each of the episodes basically in the comics or the TV show. But I think I don't know if Herge was still alive when they did that one, but he was like known for not liking the adaptations.
Hmm.
Like he did well, at least the American cartoon he really didn't like, which I thought is weird because I thought it captured like perfectly the comics. And then I don't know if you know like too much about like how many adaptations there's been, but there was also like a couple French like black and white films from like the 40s to the 60s, I think.
Oh,
Live action, which first of all, the crazy thing, if you look it up, they got like the perfect actors. Like they look exactly like the characters. Um, but I don't know how he felt about those. But I think there was something to do with like the rights holders where like they didn't want to make another one or something.
I'm seeing one movie from '61, Tintin and the Mystery of the Golden Fleece.
Yes, I think that is what I'm thinking of.
Interesting. I had no idea that there
Yeah.
had been adaptations before that point.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know when I found this out, but there was just one probably in the same day I was looking at like if there's a sequel, I just found out like looked up all the different adaptations and stuff.
Wow, yeah, I
Um,
just found a some screenshots of what Haddock and Tintin look like in this movie specifically. And wow, you're so right. They really did like nail the casting.
yeah, they look like exactly like them. It's crazy. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Spielberg Tintin and Tintin in general.
So, because that's also like a relatively niche. Like, I've only watched the movies. I have no connection whatsoever to the comics. How in the world did you get introduced to those comics?
So yeah, so a lot of like my like why I kept drawing and what I liked, like the art I liked was comic art, and not really like not not like American superhero comics.
Right.
When I was probably like um, middle school to early high school, I read. That's when I read more superhero comics, but I just never really could get into them. It was just it. Most of them were kind of ridiculous to me. I have a place in my heart for a lot of different superheroes and comics, but just in general, it's just something that I'm not a big fan of. But anyways, going back to what you asked, when there was a library near my house that we would go to, and they had a comic book section, and they had a very large collection of European comics. So they had Tintin. I don't know if you've heard of Asterix and Obelix. They had a lot of those.
No, I don't think I've ever heard of that one before either.
Yeah, so Asterix and Obelix is another, I think, French. comic, and it's basically set in during Caesar's reign in the Roman Empire when they're taking over Gaul, and there's one village of Gauls that they can't conquer because they have a magic potion that makes them like 10 times as strong as the average man.
Interesting.
And it's just like a super funny, witty comic. But yeah, so that's where my love for Tintin came from, because they had like every single Tintin comic there, and I read them all multiple times. And that's also where my love of comics came from. And so, which is why I don't think I have the average American taste for comics, because that's where I started.
No, that's so. I love how niche that is because, like, it's definitely not like the most well known thing, but because of how stylistic it is, it's not like it's not junk food comics you're consuming there. That's like some actual like good art that you're intaking, and
Yeah,
that sort
yeah,
of
exactly.
that also goes into another like one of the like sort of starting to wrap up our discussion here. I'm curious, like I'm
Mhm.
trying to this year I'm going to try and be better about asking the people that I have on like what's inspiring you right now.
That's a good question. Right now, what is inspiring me? I am like a Pinterest addict, so I'm constantly looking at Pinterest.
I feel that so
Um,
hard. I get it. I
um,
know.
so I always have like a couple of artists who are always on my feed, and so I just constantly see all of their work. One of the big things that's inspiring me right now is, which I did a drawing of recently, is a character in comic called Corto Maltese. But that's another French comic, which sadly they have very few translated into English. It's a French comic by an artist, and sorry, this is a side tangent, but I think that's another reason I really like European comics, is because for a majority of them, the writer and artist is just one person.
Okay.
So it's one person's vision. Where with American comics, there's a writer, there's a penciler, there's an inker. So it's kind of a mishmash, like
Yeah, it can
of
kind of become sort of
ideas.
a comic by committee.
Yeah, but with European comics, it's just like one person drawing and writing them, and their artistic standard is way higher. They spend a lot more time on them. But anyways, just his style of storytelling in his writing, and especially in his drawings, is just something I really like. It's super simple. He puts just what he needs to, but he also is able to get tone and a feeling of the area that you're in, even though he's using like black and white, very few lines.
Just really good at filling out that environment.
He makes it feel full without using too many lines.
Okay.
It's similar to Tintin and its adventure stories, but it's much more adult oriented and sort of deeper, and has some not too many like philosophical things, but just like deeper
Right.
conversations and
Made for an
messages and
older
stuff.
audience.
Yeah, this is just a good example I'm going to put into the terminal of
Okay.
his work, and just like in general what I like about it.
Oh wow.
But so it's very. This is one of his more like chiaroscuro black and white pieces, but just the way he uses, like if you look on the left side of the buildings, if you look closely, like it's most of it's just like scribbles, but they're intentionally placed scribbles where, so that if you're just looking at the center of attention, which is the character, you get the impression of this scene and this background around him.
For you podcast listeners, there's this character who's just sort of washed in shadow, but also light from the opposite angle, walking down like a street where half of the buildings to one side are obviously in shadow because of where the sun is, and then the other ones are in like blinding white light. And there's very just it's all just black and white, just like, and not even gray tones really. It's pretty much all just black and white. And so
Yeah,
much, you're right, so much is conveyed just with that.
yeah, and that's something that I want to, like. I'm not currently brave enough to do that in my own work. It's too scary, and I very rarely will do it and like it. So that's why I use a lot of gray tones in my black and white stuff and then use color. But that's been something that's very inspiring me a bunch, his stuff.
Nice. I will say this is just so that way I don't forget. I'm also trying to be better about giving my guests an opportunity to plug their work and tell people where they can find you social media wise or for business stuff. Like, feel free to just plug away.
Yeah, so I mean, my Instagram is Timothy Halpin Art. That's where I post most of my stuff. I do reels. I have T-shirts with my designs on them up for sale, and planning on doing more of that in the future. Because I also am a big fan of like clothes.
Oh, I'm gonna be snapping up one of those fish shirts very soon. Those look so good.
Glad to hear it. Yeah, I mean, I have one of each because I want a sample and I wear them all the time. So they're not to be like, narcissistic, but they're pretty great.
They're objectively, as someone, just so that way you don't have to say it, they're very good shirt designs. I like them a lot.
Thank you. It's really just my Instagram. If you want to reach me for business, you can get me through there. My website's linked. My commission sign up is linked. Or if you just want to see cool art, that would, give me a follow. I like to think that I give people good stuff to look at.
You do. Like, and I want to thank you again for being willing to be a guest on the podcast and for like sharing your art in a public forum where people like me can appreciate it. It's really, really cool. I love the style. It definitely gives me nostalgic vibes from like children's illustration stuff from like my youth, like books that I would find at my grandparents', just like sort of a bygone era, like a lost art of illustration. Like it's really good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be able to, because I mean, anything like old, especially art, is what I'm a big fan of. So being able to find other people who appreciate it and for them to see it in my art is like very rewarding, because that's what I'm trying to put into my art, and the fact that so many people are able to recognize that and enjoy it is something I'm really happy about.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again, Timothy, for being a guest on the Morphing Tower podcast. Now, I noticed that there's a small sailboat there down on the beach. Is that yours?
Yes, actually, and I use it to sail around this very small lake in the room. But I actually have a bit of a living quarters on the other side. So.
Oh, okay. Well, if you happen to find one of those invisible barriers, if you happen to find, like, I don't know, let's say a crack or a gap or sort of a glitched out thing where the invisible barrier is, I don't know, weakened in any way, if you could just let me know where that is so I can try and find that and escape. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode of the Morphing Tower podcast, everyone. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.